Chapter 1. People take education courses for many reasons, but three are particularly common. First, as citizens, people need to know how a major institution like the school system works so that they can make informed choices within their communities and at the voting booth. Second, as parents or potential parents, they need to know a great deal to be intelligent partners with the schools in their children's education. Third, those who consider a career in teaching need to understand the profession they may be entering. This text is written with this third group in mind, and this chapter, more than any other, focuses on those people who are exploring the teaching profession. Its purpose is to help you answer a fundamental question. Why should you become a teacher? As you read about the following teachers, we hope you come to understand more fully your own motivations for teaching. If you teach, it is quite likely that by the end of your second year of teaching, you will have had the following experiences. 1. Someone at a party or other social gathering will ask you what you do and how you like teaching. Soon the person will tell you that he or she has always wanted to be a teacher and regrets having become a stockbroker, bookkeeper, sales representative, flight attendant, disc jockey, and that he or she may still give it all up and become a teacher. 2. You will get to know an experienced teacher who confides that he or she deeply regrets having become a teacher. While in college, the person felt cut out for teaching and actually enjoyed it initially, but gradually he or she became fed up with the whole thing. Bratty kids, pushy administrators, the same old faces in the teacher's lounge, the instant expert parents, and the overemphasis on standards and high-stakes testing. Now the person feels trapped in teaching and sees no way out. The purpose of this chapter is to keep you from becoming the other person in either of these situations. It is intended to help you make a well-thought-out decision about what to do with your life, particularly if you are still undecided about becoming a teacher. At this point, you have likely answered the question, what are my motives for wanting to become a teacher? Here are a few motives you might check against your own list. I really like the idea of having a positive influence on 25 kids every day. I can't think of anything else to do with my major. Teaching seems to be a fairly secure, low-risk occupation with many attractive benefits, including lots of vacation time and time to raise a family. I always loved history, and teaching seems to be a career that will allow me to work with a subject matter that I love. I can't imagine anything more important to do with my life than helping children with disabilities learn to cope with and even overcome their barriers. The instruction I had in school was incredibly bad, and I want to correct that situation. My parents would really be pleased and proud if I were a teacher. Quite simply, I love children. I enjoy being in charge and being a positive influence on students. I really don't know what else I could do. I know about teaching and I think I could do it. I'm concerned that society is falling apart and I want to look out for the kids. Education seems as if it's going to be the action field of the future and I want to be part of it. One of my students might become a famous painter or the president of a major foundation or who knows what. It would be great to have a strong impact on one significant life. I really want to become a principal, coach, guidance counselor, college professor, educational researcher, and teaching seems to be the way to start. I have strong religious beliefs and see teaching as a good and useful way to live my life. Businesses are increasingly interested in training and educating their employees, and I want a career as a private sector educator working in corporate America. I come from a family of teachers, and teaching just seems to be the natural thing to do. I want to have fun in life, and as a teacher, I'll have fun and get paid for it. I have always felt I have a calling, a vocation to be a teacher. You may be interested in seeing whether answers to the question, why teach, have changed over time. Why did the teachers you had select teaching as a career? Why did your parents' teachers decide to teach? The data in Table 1.1 come from a study conducted every 5 years by the National Education Association. Notice the striking stability from one generation to the next of the prime motivation for teaching, desire to work with young people. From 1971 to 2006, the change is only 1%. Although not as dramatic, the generational stability of the other motivations is remarkable. Amid all the social change in recent decades, men and women continue to be drawn to the work of teaching by the same desires. As we'll see, the rewards often match the desires of those who teach. As we have seen, responses to the question, why teach, run in the gamut from teaching will satisfy me to I want to help others. Our individual motivations can change and may be quite different at different times and when we are in different moods. As social psychologist Peter Drucker quipped, "We know nothing about motivation. All we can do is write books about it." At the same time, the motivational factors, those qualities that reside within teaching, are clear and relatively constant. Researchers have identified a set of occupational rewards that can help us sort out both the attractive and unattractive qualities of a teaching career. These rewards are classified into two broad categories: extrinsic and intrinsic. Extrinsic rewards are the public external attractions of an occupation, such as money, prestige, and power. The intrinsic rewards of an occupation are the internal psychic or spiritual satisfaction one receives from one's work, such as a personal sense of accomplishment or an enjoyment of the work itself. It will come as no surprise that, comparatively speaking, teaching is somewhat out of balance, receiving generally high marks on one set of rewards and low marks on the other. Teaching has rarely been cited for its abundance of eccentric rewards, although it offers more extrinsic rewards than many other occupations, such as law enforcement and coal mining. When compared with other professions, teaching ranks low in extrinsic compensations. Teacher salaries and benefits, such as retirement plans and health care, have improved substantially in recent years. As you will see in Chapter 13, What are your job options in education? There are also encouraging signs that steady gains can be expected. Relative to salaries in occupational fields with similar educational requirements, teacher salaries do not compare favorably. However, largely as a result of the 2007 recession and the economic tightening that followed, teachers' salaries and particularly benefits are appearing in a new and more favorable light. One author, summarizing 4 recent studies, concluded, all of the U.S.-based studies on teachers' pay I read found educators making more than 60% of what their peers earned. Teachers aren't swimming in cash, but they don't have it that bad. However, the importance of salary, like the whole issue of monetary needs, varies enormously from one person to the next, and teachers' salaries vary significantly from one geographical location to the next, as you will also see in Chapter 13. Status refers to one's position in a group, that is, where one stands in relation to others. The status of a doctor or a beggar is rather clear, but the status of a teacher is more difficult to gauge. To young parents entrusting their child to school for the first time, the status of the teacher is quite high. To the same parent, 12 or 15 later on, hearing that their child wants to become a teacher, the status may be somewhat diminished. The United States' current commitment to massively reform its educational system is, however, having a positive effect on the status of teaching. Figure 1.1 shows the results of a turn-of-the-century public opinion survey that asked which of 8 professions provides the most important benefit to society. Respondents put teaching first by close to a 4-to-1 margin over physicians. This was a big improvement over a poll taken a decade earlier in which only 35% of respondents put teaching first. In more recent researches looking at the public's attitude toward teachers, 71% reported that they had trust and confidence in the men and women who are teaching children in public schools. Power is not usually seen as a reward of teaching, but it nevertheless is a quality that resides in the office. Anyone who claims that teachers do not have power has forgotten what it is like to go to school without having done the homework, and to sit in fear of being called on by Miss Gotcha. The power of the teacher is not a dollars and cents power like that of a corporate chief executive officer, but any person who can make another's day or ruin another's year has power. Although, as sociologist Dan Lordy observed, teachers are not supposed to enjoy exercising power per se. The public opinion survey discussed earlier clearly indicates that the public sees the quality of teachers as the greatest influence on student learning. A recent study by Harvard economist coined by the press as the 320,000 kindergarten teachers should significantly boost the power and prestige of teachers. The study focused on the impact of early education on the lifetime earnings of people who attend and did not attend kindergarten. The cumulative financial impact on a single class of early school attendees over their working lives was a staggering $320 million. Compared with students of similar backgrounds who did not attend, the kindergarten attendees not only earned significantly more, but also were more likely to go to college, more likely to be saving for retirement, and less likely to become single parents. There was an old joke about a student in an education course being stumped on an exam by the question, "What are the 3 best things about a career in teaching?" Finally, in desperation, he writes, June, July, and August. That student probably flunked, but he did have a point. Compared with other workers, teachers spend much less time at their work sites. If we ignore what teachers do at home by way of preparing lessons, correcting papers, and checking homework, we can say they work 6 or 7 hours a day for fewer than half the days of the year. Compared with those in power and status occupations, such as corporate finance or law, teachers have less demanding work schedules. Also, teachers have much more flexibility and personal control over how they use their time. For many men and women, family life is a top priority, and the time spent close to home and on summer vacations is a major plus associated with a teaching career. These teachers see sharing a schedule with their children or friends as a significant benefit. Teachers' work schedules, therefore, are one extrinsic reward that carries a great deal of weight. Extrinsic rewards, like company stock options or year-end bonuses, are tangible. Intrinsic rewards are by their very nature in the eye of the beholder. What might one person's intrinsic reward, such as taking a busload of students on an overnight field trip to the state capitol, is another's living nightmare. However, the most satisfied teachers are usually those attracted to such intrinsic rewards. The attraction of working with students has long been one of the strongest rewards perceived by teachers. The daily contacts, the conversations and exchanges, and even the struggles to motivate students are a deep source of satisfaction for many teachers. Seeing children learn, grow, and develop, seeing them able to do things in May that they were unable to do at the beginning of the school year, is a genuinely fulfilling experience. Being important to others satisfies profound human needs, and teachers know about and appreciate this potential to affect their lives of others. And this does not go unnoticed. Nearly 3 out of 5 teenagers surveyed mentioned teachers when asked by researchers who or what had influenced them to become the kinds of people they are. This reward is particularly meaningful to elementary school teachers who spend so much time with the same group of 15 to 30 children. Secondary school teachers who focus on a particular subject matter and may see as many as 150 students in a day identify working with students as an important attraction, but not always to the same degree as their elementary school counterparts. In the award-winning film about early Renaissance England, A Man for All Seasons, Sir Thomas More says to Richard Rich, the man who eventually betrayed him, but who at the time was seeking a cushy job at court, "Why not be a teacher, Rich? You'd be a fine teacher, perhaps a great one." Disappointed, Rich replies, "And if I were a teacher, who would know it?" Thomas More then says, your pupils, your friends. God, not a bad public, that. To many teachers, their greatest satisfaction in the sense that they are doing important work for the common good. This realization buoys them up and helps them tolerate the less attractive aspects of teaching. As we saw in Figure 1.1, the general public seems to agree that teaching provides valuable benefits for society, whereas workers in government and business are aware in an abstract sense that they're contributing to the social good, teachers have daily flesh and blood testaments to the importance of their service right before them. Many college professors report that they see more college students not only seriously considering teaching as a career, but also selecting teaching specifically because they see it as a service to the nation and a way to pay back the country. For some adult students, the deeper motive behind this service for others is a religious one. That is, they see teaching as a way to serve God by serving the young. When describing the work of teaching, researchers used to report on the sense of isolation many teachers reported they were experiencing. As will be discussed in Chapter 15, what does it mean to be a professional? This is changing as more and more teachers are working in groups and sharing in-school leadership roles. This trend aside, for many teachers, their contacts and interactions with colleagues are an important intrinsic reward. Teachers enjoy the shop talk and camaraderie that are a natural part of school life. Because teachers are not always rewarded for their individual job performance or for their expertise, feelings of competition are less prevalent than among such occupational groups as salespeople or lawyers who must compete for customers and grow their clientele. Teachers know they are part of a highly and increasing cooperative venture. For many teachers, the process of teaching is a significant reward in itself, whether they are explaining an idea, working with small groups, or designing instructional units. The actual work itself is highly gratifying. Like a pianist moving through a favorite sonata or a lawyer cross-examining a witness, teachers often draw their deepest satisfactions from the act of applying their craft. One teacher describes this feeling in this chapter's Voices from the Classroom feature. Of course, teachers vary in which activities they find rewarding. Some draw their rewards from establishing a nurturing, cooperative environment, some from unraveling complicated problems for students, and some from seeing students work and learn independently. For many teachers, all else pales before their deep sense of fulfillment in simply doing the work of teaching. As you continue reading and doing the work for this course, we urge you to keep in mind the issues of intrinsic and extrinsic rewards, personal satisfactions, and the fit between you and the work of a teacher. Begin now with some quiet reflection. One of the major educational insights applied to schooling in recent years concerns individual differences. There is a new appreciation for the unique learning styles and learning problems of children and youth. As a result, the one true way approach to education is gradually slipping by the boards. The same insight about individual differences applies to making an intelligent career choice. Because people learn in such diverse ways and differ so much in what they already know and need to learn, we can offer only sketchy guidelines here. We consider 4 categories of experience. However, that may help you answer the question, should I teach? You should use the 4 sources in whatever combination best fits your present stage of life and career decision making. Real encounters. Students who aspire to be teachers should test their commitment by putting themselves in actual school situations. As much as possible, students of teaching should observe in schools and participate in various activities that give them real encounters with students. Some teaching candidates avoid contact with the young until they begin student teaching, only to find out that young people are much different from the romantic images they have manufactured. Those nasty little 5th graders are so disgustingly juvenile, one shop student teacher told us. Further, and all too frequently, teaching candidates limit their encounters to typical elementary and secondary school students. They do not consider teaching children with mental or physical disabilities or even becoming a specialist such as a reading teacher. As a result of limited experiences, they may have been exposed to only a narrow segment of the opportunities and challenges of teaching. Increasingly, school districts are using college students as teacher aides and assistant teachers, both during the school year and in summer school. Also, a large number of teacher education programs have cooperative arrangements with schools that gives college students opportunities to play various roles within the school, usually as part of their coursework in teacher education. In addition, we urge prospective teachers to explore opportunities to be substitute teachers in nearby schools. Although the work is demanding, much can be learned from it. Besides the valuable experience and the money earned, these substitute teaching stints often lead to regular teaching positions. School districts typically are more interested in hiring someone they have seen in action and who is a known quantity rather than strangers they only know from resumes and references. If your schedule doesn't permit substitute teaching, many schools will gratefully accept part-time volunteer help from education students. Schools, however, do not exhaust the opportunities. There is much to be said for non-school contact with children, such as camp counseling, playground work, after-school recreation projects, work in orphanages and settlement houses, and youth-related church work. Other possibilities include coaching a team or sponsoring a youth club. The most important thing to get your feet wet, to get the feel of working with young people in a helping relationship. Not all learning has to take place in the school of hard knocks. In fact, civilization itself requires that we be able to capitalize on the experiences of others. Artists and other talented people can make others' experiences accessible to us for enjoyment, edification, or both. In recent years, a number of films have offered excellent glimpses into classrooms and are sources of various experiences. Among them are The English Teacher, The Great Debaters, Freedom Riders, The History Boys, The Emperor's Club, Mr. Harlan's Opus, Music of the Heart, The Ron Clark Story, Lean on Me, Dangerous Minds, Pay It Forward, Dead Poets Society, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, 16 Candles, and Stand and Deliver. These films and other sources of vicarious experiences help us both relive our own school experiences and see them in a different light. However, a caveat, the light is often distorting. Leslie Sweetnam has reported on how the media, particularly film and television, twist the public's image of teachers. Sweetnam states, problems arise from the misrepresentation of teachers, where they teach, how they teach, and what demands are placed on teachers, thereby creating an alarming distortion with consequences serious enough to warrant the concern of all educational professionals. Her analysis of the most popular media presentations of teachers and schools shows that they overrepresented male teachers, secondary schools, minority teachers, and urban schools. Other distortions are that classes are small. Teaching typically means the adult is talking, and when the class finally gets around to it, learning is fun. One genre of films that is especially distorting to those that present teachers as perverts and sadists. Films such as The Breakfast Club, Election, and Sugar and Spice, as well as hordes of others. These dark portrayals of teachers may be entertaining but hardly useful. Then there has also been a parade of comedies about school life, such as School of Rock, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Summer School, and Bad Teacher, which don't exactly flatter traditional teachers either. Great fictional classics such as Goodbye, Mr. Chips by James Hinton and The Corn is Green by Emlyn Williams portrays teachers and schools well, as do somewhat more contemporary novels like Belle Kaufman's Up the Down Staircase and Evan Hunter's The Blackboard Jungle. There have also been some fine non-fiction accounts of teaching. Among the best are Raph Esquith's Teach Like Your Hair's on Fire, Tracy Kidder's Among School Children, Samuel G. Friedman's Small Victories, and Esme Rahi Caudell's Educating Esme. Despite their occasional inaccuracies, a careful analysis of these works can prepare us for certain aspects of teaching and school life. We must remember, however, that books, films, and television often portray school life as extremes featuring heightened situations well beyond the typical experiences of most teachers. The true drama of teaching is quite long-term and terribly real. Another aid in determining whether teaching is right for you is the advice and counsel gained from those who know you. Besides parents and friends, you can consult former teachers, career placement counselors, and your college professors. The latter can be particularly helpful because, besides knowing you, they are familiar with the realities of teaching. You should use caution when seeking guidance from others, however. First, choose people who know you well rather than those who have seen you just at your better moments. Second, do not expect a comprehensive computer printout of hard data with a firm decision at the bottom line. If you get a few glimpses of insight from the advice given, be satisfied. Third, be wary from whom you seek advice. Many people are simply compulsive advice givers. People often generalize on the basis of too little knowledge, and they are sometimes just plain wrong. Receive advice openly, but follow it cautiously. The most important aspect of real school encounters, guidance, and vicarious experiences you collect is that they provide you with data for reflection. Indeed, the value of these experiences will be lost if you do not think hard about them. People are often so busy experiencing things or getting ready to experience them that they fail to reflect on what they have done or heard to ensure that they get the most from the experience. Admittedly, your authors are nags, but we cannot stress this point strongly enough. Reflection goes to the very heart of why we have written this book. Both of us are convinced that many people make sloppy decisions about becoming teachers. Often they have not asked fundamental or hard questions about themselves and about school. This is precisely why we have organized this book around questions such as why teach, and what is a school and what is it for. All of us reflect in some way on what we experience. Typically, our reflections are brief and unsystematic. The reflection practitioner thinks more thoroughly and more systematically about experiences. The next time you visit a school or view a video case of classroom life, use these questions to stimulate your thinking. What surprised you about what you observed? What was unexpected? What were the teacher's goals? From what you could tell, were they achieved? If you had the same goals, what would you have done? How did the students appear to be responding during the class? Were they all involved? Most of them? Just a few? What could have been done to improve their involvement? What, if anything, was different about these students from the way you and your classmates were at their age? Were there striking similarities? This section offers 2 case studies illustrating common motives for going into teaching. Each case study is followed by a set of questions and a comment that raises important issues about the nature of teaching. The case provides examples of how particular abstract motives take shape in teachers' lives. You may want to discuss the cases and the accompanying questions with other people. The shared experience of reading the cases and responding to the questions should help you probe and understand your own motives. Julie Tucker had been a star science student since junior high school. She received a partial scholarship to study chemistry in college and earned high marks in everything connected with science. She also derived a good deal of personal satisfaction from quietly showing her mostly male teachers and fellow students that a female could excel at science. When she graduated from college, Julia was heavily recruited by a chemical engineering firm and immediately fell in love with her job. It took a little longer, 2 years, but she fell even more in love with Nicholas, a chemist who was working on the same project. They got married, and a year and a day later, Justin was born. Julia was back at work in 6 weeks. Both Nicholas and she hoped to have 4 children, but it didn't work out that way. There was no second pregnancy. Julia was disappointed, but she took it philosophically. After all, she had a wonderful job, a loving husband, and a son who was the joy of her life. Everything was fine until Justin went off to middle school and began taking science courses. Julia couldn't wait to help him with his science homework. She stayed up late reading his science textbooks. She found him all sorts of excuses to talk to Justin's teachers about science education. She found herself daydreaming at work about how to teach scientific concepts to children. Somewhere along the way, Julia also began losing interest in the highly specialized type of chemistry she was doing. So after a great deal of soul-searching and several late-night conversations with Nicholas, she quit her job and went back to school to get a teaching license in chemistry. That was more than a year ago. Now Julia has a job, but it is hardly the job she fantasized about in her old lab, or the teaching position for which she prepared. To her surprise, when she obtains her teaching license, the only available position was at the elementary level. As a 5th grade teacher, the school superintendent realized that Julia would be a real asset to his school district, but did not have an opening in the high school for 2 more years, when the chemistry teacher was scheduled to retire. So he presented Julia with a proposition. She could take some methods courses over the summer, then teach 5th grade for 2 years, helping establish a new elementary science curriculum and be the coordinator of the annual science fair. At first, Julia was wary. She thought it would mean throwing away a good deal of her specialized knowledge and risking failure as an elementary school teacher, although the 5th grade job would last only 2 years. But after talking it over with Nicholas and getting great support from her son, she reluctantly agreed. A funny thing happened during the summer as Julia took the methods course and prepared herself for her 5th graders. She became more enthused about teaching children who she believed were just becoming interested in the outer world. When Julia actually started working with her 5th graders, she was hooked. They were so alive, responsive, and hungry to know about the world. What a challenge. Thoughts of ever becoming a chemistry teacher took a back seat to the elementary classroom. By November, however, Julia had begun to have misgivings. A certain flatness in her class worries her. Much of the September curiosity had turned into an early case of midwinter blahs. Her supervisor had conducted the first formal observation of her teaching, and Julia is curious about the supervisor's opinion. So, Suzanne, Julia says, at their post-observation conference, how did I do? You were writing up such a storm, I thought you would need another notebook. Oh, I hope you didn't find that distracting. I probably should have warned you that I would be scribbling away. No, that's fine. I'm just curious to know how I did. I'd much rather hear what you think, Julia. How do you think the class went? Well, I think pretty much as usual. They were a little quieter, perhaps because you were in there, but in general it was an average class. I did notice it being quiet, Julia. How do you feel about that? As a matter of fact, I'm confused by it. Since September, the decibel level has been steadily falling in all my classes, and particularly when we are doing science. I couldn't get them to shut up in September. They ate up everything I presented, especially science. They just seem to have lost interest. From what I just saw and from what I have observed passing by your door these weeks, I agree. Interest looks low. Suzanne, I've really worked to find topics that will interest them. I built a whole unit on pollution last month, with writing assignments and mathematics worked in. They said they were interested in heredity, so next month are going to do family histories and interviews and collections of family facts and artifacts. They were all excited about this project in September, but now I'm stumped. What's the matter? Quite honestly, Julia, I had a feeling this would happen. What do you mean? When you came to interview last June, we were thrilled at the possibility of getting someone so knowledgeable and experienced, and particularly someone who loves science so much. But those same qualities made us hesitate too. I'm not getting you, Suzanne. I know we were all concerned that I didn't have traditional preparation for elementary teaching. You're not saying I know too much and I like science too much, are you? Yes and no. No, you don't know too much, and yes, your love of science is a terrific asset, but at the same time, these qualities are keeping you from being the potentially fine teacher you can become. Julia, let me be honest. You are drowning these kids with information, and not just in science. You seem to be doing all the work. What worked so well for you during your student teaching with high school juniors and seniors doesn't work with these elementary school wigglers. Honestly, Suzanne, I am not giving them high school material. This work is within their range. I don't mean to sound offensive, but really. Julia, think romance. Romance? I thought you told me to do health and human sexuality in the spring. No, romance, like in the romance of science and the romance of writing. Do you remember telling us during your interview how you fell in love? Your words, Julia, fell in love with science in the 5th grade when you had to do a project for the science fair. Well, I think you ought to do a little time traveling and think about what caused your romance with science. Was it a fascinating question, an unsolved problem, the excitement of maybe solving a problem the adults couldn't, or was it a teacher pumping facts and theories into you? I think the dawn is breaking. I've been too busy talking at them and trying to teach them some basic information. Right. You've been so busy telling them about what you love that you forgot that romance is a two-way street. It's a classic mistake of rookie teachers, even ancient ones like you. Sometimes you can get away with it in high schools, but not in elementary schools. So what do I do now? Well, Let me put aside these notes and let's see whether you and I can put a little romance into the rest of the week's lesson. A little pedagogical seduction, Suzanne. I think you found the key. All of us had teachers whose excitement and enthusiasm for their subject were contagious. Love for a particular subject matter or content is an important and commendable motive for teaching. A major purpose of schools is to pass on the best of society's knowledge. Another important purpose is to help young people develop basic skills and attitudes, especially a love for teaching. A teacher who has a passion to convey the subject matter is effective at both of these goals. Such teachers may push students hard, but they are frequently the ones who have the greatest impact on students. But carrying love for a particular subject to an extreme can cause trouble. Real learning is usually built on students' interest. Their interest in or love of learning can be blunted when the lover is too overpowering or insistent. The great teacher, like the great lover, knows how to draw out others' interests and help students fall in love. Another danger awaits the teacher who is blinded by love of a subject. This teacher may be so busy teaching what she or he enjoys that the rest of the curriculum gets shorthanded. For example, an English teacher who loves interpreting literature often finds it easy to avoid slugging it out with grammar, punctuation, and other essential writing skills. The elementary school teacher who loves science, like Julia, may fail to give other subjects their due. Although this tendency to focus on what we know and love and to avoid what we do not know or like is understandable, it is also irresponsible. It is unfair to both the students and their later teachers who will expect students to have a command over the avoided or neglected content. Neither Julia's motives nor her problem is uncommon. Teachers who are strongly motivated by the desires to teach a particular subject matter have to be somewhat cross-eyed. While keeping one eye on what they want to teach, they need to keep the other eye on the students and their day-to-day progress and needs. Fred Harvey was in his late 30s. His disposition was so pleasant and a smile came so readily to his face that one of the other teachers in the large metropolitan high school referred to him as everybody's dad. Fred had a remarkable ability to remain relaxed when everyone else was tense, and he so often broke up emotionally charged faculty room situations and staff meetings with an appropriate quip or humorous question. Each year, Fred asked to teach the curriculum to freshman history class. Of course, his request was always granted because the Curriculum 2 classes were considered the dumping ground for slow students and students who had given up. Some of the other teachers regarded the Curriculum 2 classes as punishment. Yet year after year, Fred worked happily with students nobody else really wanted. Fred's freshman history class was one of the most active in the school. He often took his students beyond the walls of the school on expeditions to day court, the police station, jail, and industrial plants in the area. And he also managed to sneak a baseball game into the field trip lineup. Yet his classes were not characterized by fun and games. Students worked hard and long and involved homework assignments, intricate discussion of problems, and demanding tests. One year, Fred invited another teacher to speak to the class about shipbuilding in the 18th century. The talk went well, and after the session, the other teacher, Todd Vincent, commented to Fred that the discussion following his talk had been very different from what he had anticipated. The questions were thoughtful and displayed observation of detail that the guest speaker had not expected from a bunch of Curriculum 2s. Fred laughed. "You know, Todd," he said, "they amaze me too sometimes. Most of these kids really have behavior problems, not intellectual ones. If you looked at their case histories, you find that the majority of them were dropped through the ranks." "What do you mean?" asked Todd. "They were in regular classes a good bit of their scholastic lives, but when they became problems in the class, the teachers decided that the cause of their poor behavior was that the work was too hard for them. Most of the children in this class really represent the rebels, the nonconformists, the antisocials, the kids who some teachers claim won't go along with the system. They're the kids about whom many teachers say, 'I don't care whether they learn history as long as they become good citizens.' Yes, but you must admit that very few of them will go to college. Most curriculum twos just drop out, said Todd. Maybe you're missing a point, replied Fred. I guess I'm saying that people can't be good citizens unless they are contributing members of society, and that they should contribute something they think is worth contributing. If they can't get the basic tools that make a person productive, how can they be good citizens? It's a lot more than getting a job or making a decent living. In fact, I believe these kids are much more capable than the kids we send to the university. In what sense? In the sense that they are the least accepting of society as it exists now, Fred replied. If you talk to some of them for an hour or so, you'd find that they really feel the school is hypocritical in many ways, and they aren't afraid to point out the hypocrisies. They'll tell you, for instance, that there are 2 sets of rules in the school, 2 sets of discipline procedures, 2 sets of privileges, and all the rest. But I hear the same thing from my honors classes, Todd protested. Those kids know about the double standard, too. They often tell me that an honors student here can get away with anything from cutting class to smoking in the john. You've got me wrong again, Todd. What these kids are saying is not that we expect too much of them, but rather that we expect too little. For instance, if a kid dropped from an A to a C in your honors history course, what would happen? The kid would probably get a request to go in and see the counselor, Todd replied. That's right, Fred continued. When a kid everyone believes is bound for college does poorly, bells go off and people get concerned. They try to help the kid take a look at what's wrong. If one of these students goes from a C to an F, though, everyone says, well, what more do you expect? The kid's only a curriculum 2 and doesn't have the ability to sustain a C. And they get all the inexperienced teachers and martinets in the school. Oh, and they know that if they become real problems, they'll get counseling and possibly even better teaching. But that isn't their complaint. They know that the system isn't out to punish them. They know the system would rather just float along and not bother anyone. That's the double standard in this school. Those who are cared about and those who aren't. You know, said Todd, you're not just talking about the curriculum 2 classes. I think the same thing is generally true of curriculum 1 classes. It seems that a kid who's really bright gets a lot of attention, and so does the kid who's really slow. But it's that kid in the middle. You're right, said Fred. The kids in this class are the bottom of that middle group in terms of the concern they arouse from the system, and they know it. Yet, as you saw today, they are capable. We owe them a decent set of expectations. I've maintained high expectations for the kids. I would prefer to slightly overmatch them intellectually than undermatch them, because no development is possible when you're being undermatched constantly. They don't complain about being pushed too hard, asked Todd. Oh, sure, there's always a good deal of moaning, particularly in the early weeks until they realize I don't dance to that tune. Pretty soon they settle in and decide to go along with the program, but then they realize that they're actually learning. At that point, they're hooked. They're mine, and I wouldn't trade teaching them for anything. Well, Fred, this has been most instructive. I came to teach, and I ended up learning. Me too. That's what keeps me going. And Todd, please come back next semester. In addition to the serious injustice of under-challenging many students, Fred was reacting against the provision of an important idea, teaching good citizenship. In Fred's school, as in many others, the idea of teaching good citizenship has been badly distorted. During the 1930s, in a reform started by U.S. educator and philosopher John Dewey, many schools adopted the policy of awarding a grade for citizenship. Dewey and many of his followers envisioned training for citizenship as a process of working out in class actual problems that arise in a democracy. They saw the schools as an appropriate place to teach students about democratic decisions and to give them low risk but real practice in such decision making in a context where mistakes were not for keeps. As sometimes happens with reforms, educational and otherwise, the processes introduced to the classroom by these reformers gradually degenerated into empty forms. Good citizenship came to mean docility, doing what one is told. Students could learn good citizenship grades by playing the game and not bothering anyone. Citizenship became a code word among teachers. A teacher who was given a class of low achievers or discipline problems was sometimes told, "Don't worry about academic concerns with these children, just make them good citizens." Parents were told that their child wasn't a very good student but was an excellent citizen. This euphemism meant that even though he or she didn't learn anything, the child did without question everything that students were supposed to do. The use of a citizenship grade as a conduct mark is an absolute travesty of the system Dewey and the reformers designed. As Fred noted, in reality, good citizens are not docile sheep who can be coned with impunity. The long-term effect of the misinterpretation of citizenship as conformity and docility has been to discredit it as an appropriate goal for schooling. Yet in Fred, we see a person socially attempting to develop educated citizens. His class visits to courthouses, legislative sessions, and factories, as well as the classroom study of major social problems, are very much in keeping with what Dewey and indeed Thomas Jefferson and James Madison had in mind when they spoke of educating for freedom. The why teacher question and the decision about whether teaching is the right career for you is intensely personal. Although what you think about teaching and what others think about teachers too. Although what you think about teaching and whether it is a good fit for you is of primary importance, it may be useful to know what others think about teaching